Number 5. The Watchmen Contract Trap. In the mid-1980s, DC Comics was riding high on bold new experiments. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons had just redefined horror and fantasy with their acclaimed run on Swamp Thing, when DC approached them with a new challenge: create something revolutionary. What came next was Watchmen, a 12-issue miniseries that tore apart the superhero mythos and reassembled it into something darker, smarter, and infinitely more human. Critics hailed it as the comic that elevated the medium into literature. But while Watchmen redefined storytelling, the contract behind it redefined betrayal. Moore and Gibbons signed a deal that seemed fair at first. Once Watchmen went out of print, the rights to the story and characters would return to them. A win for creators, right? Wrong. DC had no intention of letting it go out of print. The company kept Watchmen perpetually in circulation, first as a trade paperback, then in deluxe editions, anniversary editions, absolute editions. You name it. Decades later, it has never gone out of print. That one clause, which looked like a path to freedom, became a cage. The result? Moore and Gibbons never regained control of their own creation. DC mined Watchmen endlessly: sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and HBO series, all against Moore's wishes. The contract was never technically broken, but it was manipulated with surgical precision. Ironically, the book that deconstructed superhero power fantasies became the greatest real-world example of creators having no power at all. Number 4. The Superman Symbol. The tragedy of Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the young Cleveland teenagers who created Superman, is comics' original heartbreak. In 1938, they sold the rights to the Man of Steel for just $130. In return, DC promised steady work, but instead, the duo were quickly sidelined, fired, and left struggling while Superman became a global phenomenon. We all know that story. But what's less talked about is the final act of corporate appropriation. Years later, Warner Brothers moved to trademark the Superman S shield. Not just Superman the character, but the symbol itself. This transformed what had once been Joe Shuster's artistic design into corporate property. It was no longer just a superhero's emblem of hope, it became a legal brand, as untouchable as the Nike swoosh or McDonald's golden arches. The effect was devastating. Even when the Siegel and Shuster families later won settlements for royalties and film credits, they still could never use the emblem. They couldn't print it on a shirt. They couldn't use it in their own projects. They couldn't license it independently. The most recognizable symbol in superhero history, the crest of truth and justice, was forever stripped from the hands of its creators. It now stood as a corporate logo, enshrining not heroism, but ownership. Number 3. Jim Starlin's Cosmic Battle. Creator struggles aren't just ancient history, they're alive and well in the modern era. Case in point, Jim Starlin. In the 1970s, Starlin reshaped Marvel's cosmic universe. He created Thanos, the mad titan obsessed with death. He created Drax the Destroyer, Gamora the Assassin, and much of the mythology that later fueled Marvel's most epic sagas. At the time, though, Starlin was just another freelancer under a work-for-hire contract, paid only a page rate. His characters exploded in popularity in the comics, but he didn't see a dime beyond his paycheck. Toys, posters, t-shirts, role-playing games, his creations were everywhere, yet he earned nothing. Then came the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame made Thanos the centerpiece of the biggest box office phenomenon in film history. Gamora and Drax became household names through Guardians of the Galaxy. Starlin's creations were suddenly worth billions, not millions, billions. Yet he had to fight tooth and nail for even modest compensation. After long negotiations, Marvel reportedly paid him more for Thanos' brief appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy than for Infinity War itself. Think about that. The villain who defined the MCU was worth more to the company than to the man who dreamed him up. Jim Starlin gave Marvel the building blocks of its cinematic empire. In return, he got legal battles, frustration, and a reminder that even in the 21st century, the cosmic war between corporations and creators is far from over. Number 2. The Lifetime War of Siegel and Shuster. If Starlin's fight was modern, Siegel and Shuster's was eternal. Their battle for Superman lasted their entire lives. After selling Superman for $130, they were quickly erased from the character's history. Their names were stripped from the comics. They were fired from the book they had created. By the 1940s, they were outsiders to their own legacy, while Superman was on radio, TV, in cartoons, and on lunchboxes everywhere. They sued DC multiple times, trying to reclaim their rights. Every time, they lost. Courts upheld work-for-hire laws, cementing Superman as corporate property. To make matters worse, when they created Superboy independently, DC sued them. The consequences were brutal. Siegel and Shuster lived in poverty, health failing, their industry turning its back on them. Their legacy was erased while DC grew rich. Only in the 1970s, after a public outcry led by fellow creators and journalists, did DC cave. The company granted them a modest pension and finally restored their names to Superman Comics. It wasn't charity, it was shame management. By the time larger settlements were reached in the 2000s, Siegel and Schuster were long gone. They never lived to see true recognition. Their families inherited the fight, but for the men themselves, Superman was both their greatest gift to the world and their greatest curse. Number 1. The erasure of Bill Finger. If Siegel and Schuster's battle was about money, Bill Finger's story was about something even more fundamental: credit itself. For decades, the world believed Bob Kane alone created Batman. His name appeared on every comic, every adaptation, every credit roll. But behind the myth was a hidden truth: it was Bill Finger who gave Batman his soul. Kane's original Batman sketch looked more like a masked acrobat in red tights. It was Finger who changed everything. He designed the cowl, the scalloped cape, the dark gray and black color scheme. He gave Batman his tragic origin, the alleyway murder of Bruce Wayne's parents. He created Gotham City. He named Bruce Wayne. He introduced Commissioner Gordon and the Joker. Piece by piece, Finger shaped the Batman mythos into the legend we know today. But Bob Kane, savvy and self-promotional, signed a contract guaranteeing himself sole credit forever. Finger, quiet and modest, was erased. He died in 1974, poor, obscure, and uncredited. For over half a century, Batman's true co-creator was invisible. Only in 2015, after relentless campaigns by historians and Finger's family, did DC finally acknowledge the truth. At long last, Bill Finger's name appeared alongside Bob Kane's as co-creator of Batman. Finger's story is the most shocking because it wasn't just about money. It was about erasing a man's name from history. Batman, a symbol of justice, was built on one of the greatest injustices in comics.